Well, here's another nerd talk for your amusement, hopefully. Are the swords from the Lord of the Rings movies realistic? Would they be practical in real life? This is something that many of my subscribers have asked over and over again, one of the most common requests. Talk about Lord of the Rings. Is Glamdring realistic? What about the uruk-hai machete? Is it practical? What about this? What about that? And so far, I didn't really want to make a video about it because I thought that it wouldn't be very interesting or entertaining because I simply don't find much to talk about here, really. And frankly, I still think it's not going to be all that good. But, considering how many people apparently want to see this and here we go. I'll finally do it. All right. Okay. So the reason why I think there isn't too much to talk about is the answer is mostly yes. Pretty much for all of them, the answer is yes. I can end the video right here. Yes, the Lord of the Rings swords are practical. In general, I mean, you can clearly see that they are inspired by historical swords, which obviously work because they were used in actual combat, like Glamdring and Anduril, I forgot how it's pronounced. But those are very clearly based on medieval longswords. The hilt looks a little different. They have their own individual style, but you can very clearly see that it's pretty much the same thing. So in terms of proportions, shape, everything is reasonable. They are not overly thick. They don't have bizarrely shaped handles. They would actually be comfortable to hold and use. Looking at sting, it's somewhat reminiscent of a xiphos, an ancient Greek sword. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it seems somewhat familiar. And there's nothing wrong with it in terms of design. Personally, I think that if you're pretty short, like a hobbit, to begin with, and you have a fairly short reach, it might not be the greatest idea to pick a short sword. Personally, I'd maybe go for a longer sword and attempt to compensate for the reach disadvantage. But then again, you can also go for the, agile, roguelike approach, if you will. So yeah, nothing particularly wrong with it. Personally, I think you should really be carrying a buckler or a shield together with that, because just a short sword can put you at a disadvantage against something like a long sword or an arming sword and shield, or especially a spear, anything like that. The uruk-hai sword or machete, or sometimes it's called a scimitar for whatever bizarre reason. It literally has nothing at all in common with a scimitar, so I have no idea why anybody would call it that. But regardless, so this is something that a lot of people were wondering about, and nothing wrong with it. Once again, in fact, I think it's a very smart design because it fits the orcs really well. It looks like a brutal weapon, and the back spike would be very effective at penetrating armor or skulls and bone and, other gruesome things like that. So it makes a lot of sense. It looks brutish, but it doesn't look like it's poorly made by any means. It doesn't look like it would fall apart. They usually look like they have a patina because you don't really expect orcs to take good care of their weapons. But at the same time, it shouldn't be something that a complete imbecile tried to forge that would fall apart as soon as you hit something. So yeah, it's decently made. It's just, it has a certain brutish character to it, which makes a lot of sense. And yes, it would be effective. No problem with it. It doesn't have a guard. Personally, I'm not a fan of swords without guards, but it depends on the fighting style. Many historical swords didn't have a guard either, and it really depends on what your tactic is, how you want to fight. So again, no problem with it, especially combined with a shield. That would work just fine. How the Fang looks rather exotic and more along the lines of other fantasy designs. At least to a medieval knight, this thing would look very strange, most likely. But it depends on what you compare it to. There are some pretty fancy historical swords from Asia. Especially India has come up with some, bizarre designs, and other places as well. And, considering some of the strangest things that existed, doesn't seem all that unusual, really. And it's a nice, elegant design. These little spikes there wouldn't, or whatever you want to call that, wouldn't do all that much. There is a chance that they might catch an opponent's blade, but wouldn't really be all that effective, I would think. Again, no guard, which, something that I don't like, but it's not something that you have to necessarily criticize. And then there's Orcrist, another fancy and, in my opinion, quite nice looking sword. And
it would be a powerful cutter due to the extra mass between the center and the point of the blade and the recurve shape that helps the edge bite into the material in a slicing cut. And, well, half a guard is better than no guard, in my opinion.
Also with this one, there is nothing wrong. So you see the thing here, the theme going on. With every single one, I say, yeah, good, no problem. I think that they are very well designed, like even from a fantasy artist point of view. And in terms of practicality, yeah, you could make one of these and, use them, depending on exactly how they are made. Of course, an incompetent blacksmith can ruin pretty much any design. Just like a very skilled blacksmith can make a lot of strange looking designs work out. Because the main important thing is how's the weight? How's it balanced? What is the grip like? What is it wrapped in? How is it shaped? Is it ergonomic? Does it move? Does it flow well in the hand? Is the blade shape effective? Is the blade geometry good? The edge bevel and all of that. There are lots of detailed things that you don't see on just one picture. Those are things that you would feel if you held the actual reproduction. I found one thing which I can criticize, namely this dagger here. I know, not a sword, but I'm just gonna include it anyway. The guard on this one is curved in the wrong direction. The fact that there is a guard suggests that you should be able to parry with it. But the problem is, since the guard is curved downward, if you were to actually parry an opponent's sword with it and the blade slides down on the guard, hits the guard, it's going to roll right off and onto your forearm. If you're lucky, it's going to go off the other side, which could still be potentially dangerous depending on how you're placed, or positioned, I should say. But it seems a little strange to have a guard curved downward that would just redirect it exactly where you don't want it. But that's the only thing. Yes, there is the elephant in the room, the Witch King's mace, which again is not a sword. And I don't think I have to really say anything about that, right? It's obviously realistic. Derping around here. It's obviously ridiculous. I mean, the filmmakers at the set were joking about how ridiculous and impractical that thing is. They were fully aware of it. So this is really more of a joke. So there you have it. All of this blah blah just to come up with a simple, yes, they are in fact practical designs. Hope you enjoyed it anyway. And happy holidays. Thanks for watching.